From the newsroom of Impact Alpha, I'm Monique Aiken, and this is your Impact Briefing for Friday, October 21st. Today, I'm joined live and in person by Impact Alpha's David Bank and our friend Rodney Foxworth, CEO of Common Future from SOCAP 22 in San Francisco. But first, here's what you need to know from the week in impact investing. To ESG or not to ESG? The three-letter acronym has become a political football. But despite the politics, what is clear is that a corporation's environmental, social, and governance risks and impacts are material. Former Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, is telling CEOs to avoid the term in case Republicans take over one or both houses of Congress next month. But former Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick, now with Bain Capital Double Impact, told ImpactAlpha that investors should lean into impact because that is where the growth is coming from. And what about ESG? In a guest post, Margot Brandenburg, Bob Eccles, and Leo Strine argue for double ESG to recognize that employees, workers, are the most important people in capitalism. The Rockefeller Foundation is making climate change central to everything it does. Global warming by 3 degrees Celsius would wipe out all of the work they have accomplished over the last few decades, said Rockefeller Foundation President Raj Shah. The foundation, created by oil magnate John D. Rockefeller, committed to divesting from fossil fuels 2 years ago. Impact Alpha's Amy Cortese has a Q&A with Rockefeller's Thomas Velasquez up on ImpactAlpha.com. The effort to diversify the field of asset management got a boost from the Securities and Exchange Commission. The SEC released guidance that investment advisors can consider diversity, equity, inclusion, or DEI in recommending asset managers to clients. The SEC's Asset Management Advisory Committee last year highlighted the lack of diversity in that industry. And New Forest secured $200 million from development finance institutions to conserve Africa's forests. Nearly 10 million acres of forests in Africa, one of the Earth's most important carbon sinks, are disappearing each year. British International Investment, Norfund, and FinFund are investors in New Forest's African Forestry Impact Platform. Development finance institutions can do much more in the wake of cascading climate and energy crises, says the Natural Resources Defense Council and other organizations. They are urging the World Bank to shift the billions of dollars it invests in fossil fuel projects to climate mitigation and adaptation. Hi, David. Hi, Rodney. Welcome to the podcast. Nice to have you back.
Yeah, great to be back.
I'm so delighted to be here at SOCAP with both of you. It's kind of like SOCAP royalty.
Well, I've certainly been around in a couple of plenaries for sure, but it's so great to have you with us, Rodney. I know that you and the team have spent a lot of time thinking about how to make this happen this year and coming together again after so many years apart. How's it been for you?
It's been great. And obviously you've been an integral member of that team, by the way. So don't let Monique make it seem as though she hasn't been an important piece of all of this. But it's been great to be back in person with everyone. I joined the SOCAP community back in 2015. And so not being able to convene over the last couple of years has been a major, detriment to me personally. And so it's been great to be able to reconnect with so many wonderful people, including the two of you, of course.
Just to catch the listeners up, Common Future is now an investor in SOCAP.
That's right. Yeah. So we became an investor back in July or so of this year. And I recently joined the board as well, David.
And I was interested when we wrote up the news of that deal. You were saying that you really wanted to see if you could push SOCAP, I think, in some new directions and kind of interrogate, I think was your word, impact investing. Is it really all that transformational after all?
Yeah, and I would say to that, one of the things I keep thinking about and has been very apparent even at this SOCAP, and thanks because, in large part to the partnership with Make Justice Normal and Monique and others, to really have a real conversation around what inclusion and equity looks like in the impact investing space. That's always been a long-standing conversation, David. I feel like we keep coming back to that conversation every single year, every single day. And so, I've always been a loving critic of SOCAP. And by extension, impact investing in general. SOCAP is this wonderful platform for the impact investing community. And so I keep thinking about what does impact investing really mean for those who are most impacted by economic and racial injustice. You know, we talk about doing well by doing good. What does that mean for people who are actually impacted by all these injustices?
Yeah, yeah. Monique, I know you've been involved really heavily in actually planning this SOCAP that we're sitting at right now, and just what's your thoughts now as we're wrapping up?
I think it felt different. I think it felt cathartic in a way to be together again. And it's kind of weird. I'm not used to being in public anymore and with people, but also important to be with people this year. And this is why we were willing to do it. Is this a moment that we can change the trajectory of something, of someone's life, of our sector, of this, of the way that we're going as a world? Like, how do we get to the urgency? And maybe coming together right now can, like physics, it acts on us. We move differently in a different direction and hopefully faster.
Yeah, and the thing is, David, we were talking about this a little bit ago. The world in which we're living in, and the way that the world will be moving forward is quite different than when I entered the SOCAP community back in 2015. And I think that's a context that impact investing has to really be aware of. So all of us need to be aware of that in this quote unquote post-COVID world that we're living through. Obviously, in the US in particular, based on the work that we do, and so many folks in the US are working on the political environment, the cultural environment. What does that mean for impact investing? What can impact investors actually be able to do to help shape a more productive conversation, and that is really centered around equity and inclusion, that really is about power and control, as we're seeing so many communities losing even more access and rights than even previously. And so what is the role for impact investors in this world?
I think it's so important because I think it's always confounded me is whether impact investing really can be like a popular movement to change the trajectory, as you said, Monique, of the economy, or whether it's kind of this, just the next wealth management strategy or something. And I think there's kind of always been a little schizophrenia in the field about that.
And you see that SOCAP itself, actually, right? There's multiple tents. SOCAP is a large tent. And within it, there's so many different perspectives and opinions and obviously lived experiences. And certainly I come from a perspective of impact investing really needs to be about, if we're talking about transformation, then it really needs to be about asserting more power and control, more access to communities and individuals that have constantly been excluded purposefully by our economy. And that's not always the conversation that we're having. And I appreciate the depth and diversity of the impact investing community, certainly the platform of SOCAP itself. But that's what I'm concerned about, right? This question of, can you do well by doing good? Well, who's actually benefiting from that, right? Who's actually benefiting from the investments? What's the return of investment? Who does it go to, right? And so those are all the kind of questions, and particularly when I think about the power that is held in spaces like SOCAP and the impact investing community at large. What does that mean to be more disruptive, to share that power? Those are the kind of conversations I'm most interested in, David, Monique. That's where I sort of sit with things. Again, acknowledging that there's so many different perspectives, but that's where, especially in this moment where we're losing political rights, we're losing economic rights, reproductive rights. There's so many things that are happening that I really want the impact investing community, impact investors at large, to really see and assess their own power and how they can use it in this moment.
There's another aspect that we talked about, like we're coming up on a national election in a few weeks, and it's kind of almost been, I don't know, unspoken here at SOCAP in a strange way. And it's often, I think, the impact investing world kind of keeps itself a little bit apart. I always am struck that there's so many of those solutions, access to capital for small businesses, for emerging fund managers who are going to get capital to small businesses and different kinds of solutions, that those kinds of things actually should be kind of a popular platform. I mean, that's something actually folks could get behind. It's not exactly a radical notion to like seed small businesses so that they can create jobs and deliver services.
Well, that's one of the reasons why we made democracy one of the themes this year, because it's not usually on this agenda, but we need policy too. To get the system to move, you need all the levers for change, including, access to voting, democracy, greater inclusion in the franchise, wherever you are in the world. And so we wanted to put that here in a way. The opening networking session was called Saving Democracy. That's not a conversation usually had here, but we wanted to see how can we weave it in for those who are not conscious that that's an important part of how systems change will occur.
Yeah, that was super welcome to see, Monique. Tell us a few other highlights that you were sort of in the behind the scenes, pulling the strings here. What did you take away?
We wanted to have a little more interactivity along the way, and hopefully people felt it in their bodies a little bit. This idea of voting with your feet, standing up at times, and saying something sort of in a public way was important. And also conversations like that was led by Inside Circle. You get to change by changing yourself first, changing your idea. You have to have a new narrative in your mind that it's possible to make change. And if we're doing things the same as we did it in 2019, we're doing it wrong. That's it, bottom line. So how can we be different tomorrow?
We had an item in the brief this week that talked about how transactional, kind of in a good way, SOCAP has become. I mean, I think in the old days, there was a lot of aspiration. Now it seems like there's deals being done, including by you, Rodney, I think, right?
Yeah, I think so much of this has been, there's, as I said earlier, SOCAP is such a diverse platform. Everything that Monique was pointing to in terms of the conversations that are so important, so aspirational, to your point, David. And there's real opportunity for actual deals to happen, partnerships to be built. I certainly prioritize a lot of my time at SOCAP this time around exactly that. Meeting with individuals and institutions that Common Future feels alignment with, and seeing if there's opportunities for us to work collaboratively and, potentially do some co-investment and work together moving forward. I think there's a real important piece of this as well. We have to hold both the aspirational and also the practical, right? There's so many brilliant, wonderful people that are aligned in so many different ways within the SOCAP community that we want to be able to make sure there's opportunity for you to broker and develop relationships and actually advance your agenda, your collective agendas. And so that's something that I've been really excited about this past week. And quite frankly, I've done more of it this week than I had in years past. But I think part of that, David, is to your earlier point about this world that we're living in. We have to have so much urgency. So we have to have urgency on the aspirational side of things. But at the same time, SOCAP, at least for me this year, has been a really wonderful opportunity to broker, develop partnerships urgently so that I can move forward things that are priorities at Common Future. And I'm certain that many other people have felt the same way. I saw the quote in ImpactAlpha that this was an observation that there have been more deals being made at SOCAP this year than in any year prior.
I mean, I guess ultimately the proof is in the pudding. Communities and these solutions need to be scaled up. We need the dollars to flow. And the point is to flow those dollars more thoughtfully to those solutions, the people who are delivering them as fast as possible, because the scale of the urgency of the crisis are real and they're present.
Well, ImpactAlpha has its own roots in SOCAP way back, and kind of in some sense comes out of this community, and in some sense kind of tries to serve this community as well. And part of that is the connections with folks like you, Monique, and Rodney. So it's been delightful to be here with you on our podcast, Monique.
Yeah, thanks for coming again.
Always love to do it.
Always good to have you.
And that's going to do it for this week's Impact Briefing. Thanks to Rodney, David, and our producer, Isaac Silk. Ready to try ImpactAlpha? Sign up for ImpactAlpha Open, free of charge, directly at ImpactAlpha.com. Want to go deeper? Grab a subscription and get full access to the site, Agents of Impact calls, and the daily email brief. Just go to ImpactAlpha.com/subscribe and choose an annual subscription. Thank you for listening. I'm Monique Aiken, Managing Director for TIP, the Investment Integration Project. Make sure to check back for next week's briefing, and until then, take care.